Have you ever wondered if one wrong turn could lead you to exactly where you're meant to be? The headlights cut through the Scottish darkness like weak torches against an ocean of black. Sarah Mitchell gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white, as rain hammered the windshield of her rental car. The GPS had died 20 minutes ago, leaving her with nothing but a crumpled map and growing panic. She should never have taken this road. The main highway would have added an hour to her journey to Inverness, but at least she would have known where she was. Instead, she had listened to the overly cheerful woman at the petrol station who had insisted this route through the Highlands was shorter and more scenic. Scenic. Sarah almost laughed. All she could see was rain, darkness, and the narrow ribbon of asphalt that seemed to be leading her nowhere. The car shuddered as she hit another pothole. Sarah winced, imagining the rental company's face when she returned the vehicle. If she returned it. At this point, she was beginning to wonder if she would ever find her way back to civilization. A flash of lightning illuminated the landscape for a brief moment, and Sarah's breath caught. To her left, the ground dropped away into nothingness. To her right, steep hills rose like sleeping giants. She was truly in the middle of nowhere. The engine coughed. No, no, no. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. The car coughed again, sputtered, and then died completely. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. Sarah turned the key. Nothing. Again. The engine gave a pitiful wheeze but refused to start. She dropped her forehead onto the steering wheel, fighting back tears. This was supposed to be her fresh start. Her chance to rebuild after the divorce, after everything Marcus had put her through. She had sold everything, packed up her life in London, and accepted the teaching position at a small school in Inverness. A new beginning in a place where no one knew her story, where no one would look at her with pity or judgment. And now, she was stranded in the Scottish Highlands in the middle of a storm with a dead car and no phone signal. Sarah grabbed her mobile from the passenger seat and held it up, watching the screen hopefully. No service. Of course not. She was probably 50 miles from the nearest cell tower. She sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, listening to the rain and trying to decide what to do. Stay in the car until morning? Start walking, and hope to find help. Both options seemed equally terrible. The knock on her window made her scream. A face appeared at the glass, partially obscured by the hood of a waxed jacket. Sarah's heart raced as she pressed herself against the driver's seat. The figure gestured for her to lower the window. Every instinct told her not to. She was alone, vulnerable, on a deserted road in the middle of nowhere. But what choice did she have? She cracked the window an inch. "Are you all right?" The voice was deep, with a thick Scottish accent that made the words almost musical. "My car broke down." Sarah's voice came out shakier than she wanted. I can see that." There was no mockery in his tone, just statement of fact. "You cannot stay here. The road floods when it rains like this. You will be swept away before morning." Sarah's stomach dropped. Floods? Every time. There is a reason no one uses this road in bad weather. He pulled his hood back slightly, and Sarah caught a glimpse of dark hair plastered to his forehead, a strong jaw covered in several days of stubble, and eyes that even in the darkness seemed to hold a quiet intensity. "My cottage is half a mile up the road. You can shelter there until the storm passes, and we can look at your car in daylight." "I don't know you." The words came out before Sarah could stop them. "No, you do not." He stepped back from the car. "But you have two choices. Come with a stranger who is offering help, or stay in a car that will likely be underwater in an hour. Your decision." He started to walk away, and panic seized Sarah's chest. She fumbled with the door handle, grabbing her overnight bag from the back seat. "Wait." He turned back, water streaming off his jacket. Up close, she could see he was tall, probably in his late 30s, with a weathered face that spoke of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. He did not smile, did not try to reassure her. He simply waited. "How far did you say?" Sarah asked, already soaked despite having been outside for only seconds. "Half a mile. Can you walk?" Sarah looked down at her leather boots, completely unsuitable for hiking through a highland storm. "I will manage." He nodded once and started walking. Sarah followed, her bag growing heavier with each step as the rain soaked through the canvas. The man did not slow his pace or look back to check if she was keeping up. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew every stone and curve of this road, even in complete darkness. Sarah stumbled on a rock she could not see, catching herself at the last moment. The man glanced back, but said nothing, just kept walking. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward, refusing to ask him to slow down. By the time they reached the cottage, Sarah was shivering uncontrollably. The building materialized out of the darkness like something from a fairy tale. Stone walls, a slate roof, warm light glowing from behind curtained windows. Smoke rose from a chimney, immediately beaten down by the wind. He opened the door without ceremony and gestured for her to enter. Sarah stepped into warmth and light, water dripping from every inch of her. The cottage was exactly what she would have imagined. Low ceilings with exposed beams, a fireplace crackling with peat, worn but comfortable furniture, and the smell of something cooking. "Take off your wet things." He was already shrugging out of his jacket, hanging it on a hook by the door. "There is a bathroom through there. Clean towels in the cupboard. I will find you something dry to wear." Sarah opened her mouth to thank him, but he had already disappeared through another doorway. She stood there dripping on the flagstone floor, taking in her surroundings. Books lined the walls, their spines worn with use. A desk in the corner held a laptop and stacks of papers. Through an archway, she could see a kitchen with copper pots hanging from hooks. The bathroom was tiny but immaculate. Sarah stripped off her soaked clothing and toweled herself dry, her skin pink from the cold. Someone knocked on the door. "Clothes," the man's voice called through the wood. Sarah cracked the door open, and a hand appeared, holding folded garments. She took them and closed the door again, examining what he had given her. A flannel shirt, soft from many washings, and a pair of sweatpants with a drawstring waist. Both were far too large, but they were warm and dry. When she emerged from the bathroom, he was in the kitchen stirring something in a pot on the stove. He had changed as well, wearing dry jeans and a thick wool sweater. His dark hair was still damp, pushed back from his forehead. "Sit." He gestured to a chair by the fire. "You need to warm up properly." Sarah sat, pulling the oversized shirt closer around her. The fire's heat was glorious against her chilled skin. The man appeared with a mug of something steaming. "Drink this." Sarah took the mug, sniffing cautiously. "What is it?" "Tea with whiskey and honey. It will help with the cold." She took a sip and felt warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you for everything. I am Sarah, by the way. Sarah Mitchell." "Callum Mackenzie." He settled into the chair opposite hers, cradling his own mug. "What brings you to the Highlands, Sarah Mitchell?" "A job. I am starting as a teacher in Inverness next week. I flew into Glasgow this morning and rented a car, but I got lost." She laughed without humor. Obviously. Was that the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth? It disappeared too quickly for Sarah to be sure. "You are far off course. This road goes nowhere useful. The woman at the petrol station said it was a shortcut. Mrs. Campbell." Now he definitely smiled, and the transformation was startling. His whole face softened, making him look younger. "She tells that to everyone. Likes to imagine she is helping tourists find the real Scotland." "Well, I certainly found something real." Sarah took another sip of the fortified tea. "Do you live here alone?" "I do. It is very isolated." "That is the point." His expression closed off again. "I write. I need quiet. What do you write? History books. Academic work, mostly. Callum stood abruptly. You must be hungry. I was making stew when I saw your car. He retreated to the kitchen before Sarah could respond. She sat by the fire, feeling the warmth seep back into her bones, and studied the room more carefully. The books were mostly history texts, as he had said, but there were also volumes of poetry, classic novels, and what looked like Gaelic language primers. A framed photograph on the mantel showed a younger Callum with an older couple, all three smiling broadly. Callum returned with 2 bowls of stew and a basket of bread. He handed one to Sarah and sat back down, eating in silence. The stew was delicious, rich with lamb and root vegetables. Sarah realized she had not eaten since breakfast in Glasgow, a lifetime ago. This is wonderful, she said. My mother's recipe. She insisted I learn to cook properly before I moved out here. How long have you been here? 3 years. He tore off a piece of bread. I bought the cottage after my wife died. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah did not know what to say. I am so sorry. Callum shrugged, but his jaw was tight. It was sudden. An aneurysm. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. I could not stay in Edinburgh after that. Too many memories. Sarah understood that impulse all too well. I am leaving my old life behind too. Different reasons, but I understand wanting to start fresh. He looked at her with those intense eyes. What are you running from? A marriage that should have ended years before it did. A husband who thought having affairs was acceptable as long as I did not find out. A life that stopped being mine somewhere along the way. The words tumbled out before Sarah could stop them. Maybe it was the whiskey and the tea, or the strangeness of confessing to a man she had just met, but suddenly, she could not hold it back. I spent 10 years trying to be perfect for him. The perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect accessory, and it was never enough. His loss. Callum said it simply, as if it were an indisputable fact. Something about that straightforward response made Sarah's eyes prick with tears. No platitudes, no uncomfortable sympathy, just a simple acknowledgement that her ex-husband had been a fool. Thank you, she whispered. They finished eating in comfortable silence. The rain continued to pound against the windows, but inside the cottage it was warm and safe. Callum collected the bowls and returned with 2 glasses of whiskey. For the shock, he said, handing one to Sarah. She took it, their fingers brushing for a moment. A tingle ran up her arm, and she pulled back quickly. Callum did not seem to notice, settling back into his chair and gazing into the fire. You can take the bedroom, he said after a long moment. I will sleep on the sofa. I cannot take your bed. You are a guest. You will take the bed. His tone left no room for argument. We will see about your car in the morning. If it needs proper repairs, I can drive you to Inverness. You have done too much already. I have done what any decent person would do. Callum stood. Come, I will show you the bedroom. Sarah followed him through a narrow hallway to a small room at the back of the cottage. A double bed dominated the space, covered in a thick quilt. The walls were bare stone, and a single window looked out onto darkness. There are extra blankets in the wardrobe if you need them. The bathroom is as you know. He paused at the doorway. Sleep well, Sarah Mitchell. Good night, Callum, and thank you, truly. He nodded and disappeared, closing the door quietly behind him. Sarah sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The events of the evening crashed over her. She was in a stranger's cottage in the middle of the Scottish Highlands, wearing his clothes, trusting him completely despite knowing nothing about him. And somehow, she felt safer than she had in years. Sarah woke to pale morning light filtering through the curtains and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she could not remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The storm, the broken car, Callum. She got out of bed and found her clothes from yesterday hanging over a chair, dry and neatly folded. Sarah dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen. Callum was at the stove, frying eggs. He was wearing the same jeans as last night with a different sweater, this one dark green. His hair was damp, suggesting he had already been outside. "Good morning," Sarah said. He turned, and she caught a glimpse of surprise on his face before it smoothed into his usual serious expression. "Morning. Coffee? Please." He poured her a mug from a French press on the counter. Sarah took it gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "I checked your car at first light," Callum said, cracking another egg into the pan. "The engine is flooded. It will need to dry out, and even then, I am not certain it will run properly. You hit something on the road. There is damage to the undercarriage." Sarah's heart sank. "How long will it take to dry out?" "A day, maybe 2. But the damage is another matter. You will need a mechanic." "Is there one nearby?" "In Kinlochleven. About 10 miles from here." Callum slid eggs onto 2 plates and added thick slices of toast. "I can take you there after breakfast." They ate at a small table by the window. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean and sparkling. Sarah could see for the first time where she actually was. The cottage sat in a small glen, surrounded by hills that rose steeply on all sides. A stream tumbled past, swollen from the night's rain. It was breathtakingly beautiful. "I can see why you chose this place," she said. Callum followed her gaze. "It is peaceful. That is what I needed." "Do you not get lonely?" He considered the question. "Sometimes, but I prefer loneliness to the wrong company." Sarah understood that too. She had been lonelier in her marriage than she had ever been alone. After breakfast, they walked to where Sarah's car sat forlornly on the side of the road. In daylight, she could see how bad the situation really was. Watermarks on the doors showed how high the flood had risen during the night. If she had stayed in the vehicle, as she had been tempted to do, she would have been in serious danger. "I could have died," she said quietly. "Aye." Callum crouched down to examine the underside of the car. "But you did not. That is what matters." He stood and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Come. We will go to Kinlochleven and find McPherson. He is the best mechanic in the Highlands." Callum's car was a battered Land Rover that looked like it had survived several wars. But the engine started with a healthy roar, and soon they were bouncing down the mountain road. In daylight, Sarah could see what she had missed the night before. The road was barely more than a track, winding precariously along the hillside with sheer drops on one side. "This is terrifying in daylight," she said, gripping the door handle. "I cannot believe I tried to drive it in the dark. You were brave, or foolish. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference." There was that hint of a smile again. Kinlochleven was a small village nestled at the head of a sea loch. They found McPherson's garage easily enough. The mechanic was a barrel-chested man in his 60s with oil-stained hands and a skeptical expression. "Flooded, is it?" He listened to Callum's description of the damage. "Aye, I can fix it, but it will take a few days. Need to order parts from Inverness." "How many days?" Sarah asked. McPherson scratched his chin. 3, maybe 4, depends on when the parts arrive. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. "But I need to be in Inverness by Monday. I start my new job." "It is only Thursday," Callum pointed out. "You have time." "But where will I stay? I cannot impose on you for 4 days." "Why not?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "I have space. You are not a bother. You do not even know me. I know enough." Callum turned to McPherson. "Fix the car. Take your time and do it right. Send the bill to me." "Callum, no. I cannot let you pay for it." He was already walking back to the Land Rover. Sarah hurried after him, torn between gratitude and embarrassment. "I will pay you back," she said once they were driving. If you insist. His tone suggested he did not care either way. But there is no rush. They stopped at a small shop in the village where Callum bought supplies. Sarah watched him move through the aisles with quiet efficiency, selecting items without hesitation. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with sharp eyes, watched them with obvious curiosity. "This your friend from down south, Callum?" she asked as she rang up the purchases. "This is Sarah Mitchell. Her car broke down." "Did it now?" The woman's eyes twinkled. How fortunate that Callum was there to help. He does not get enough company up at that cottage. "Mrs. Fraser runs the village information network," Callum said dryly. "By evening, everyone will know you are staying with me." "Let them talk." Mrs. Fraser bagged the groceries with brisk movements. "It is about time you had someone around. That place is too quiet for a man your age." "I like quiet." "Aye, but quiet is not the same as lonely." She handed the bags to Callum. "You take care of this one, Sarah Mitchell." He pretends he does not need looking after, but he does. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "We are not. I mean, I am just staying until my car is fixed." "Of course, dear." Mrs. Fraser's expression said she did not believe that for a moment. As they drove back to the cottage, Sarah found herself stealing glances at Callum's profile. He was attractive in a rugged, understated way. Not handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something compelling about the strong lines of his face, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel with casual competence. "Stop it," Sarah told herself firmly. "You are rebuilding your life. You do not need complications, especially not with a man you met yesterday who is clearly still grieving his wife." But her heart did not seem to be listening to logic. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Sarah woke each morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Callum working at his desk in the corner of the living room. She would make breakfast while he finished whatever section he was writing. They would eat together, talking about history, teaching, books, life. In the afternoons, Callum would show her around the glen. They walked to a waterfall hidden in a fold of the hills. They climbed to the top of the highest peak and looked out over the highlands stretching in every direction. They sat by the stream and watched salmon leap. Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in years. Callum had a dry wit that caught her off guard. He would say something completely deadpan, and she would realize a moment later that he was joking. His rare smiles felt like gifts, earned and therefore precious. On the third evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Sarah asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you help me? Really? You could have just told me where to find shelter. You did not have to bring me here." Callum was quiet for a long time, staring into the flames. "Because 3 years ago, when my wife died, I was lost. Completely lost. And people helped me. Neighbors brought food. Friends sat with me even when I could not speak. Strangers were kind when I needed kindness most." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I could not leave you stranded on that road any more than they could leave me alone with my grief. I am sorry you went through that. So am I. But it happened. All I can do is try to be the kind of person who helps when help is needed." He took a sip of whiskey. "And you looked like you needed help." "I did. I do." Sarah curled her legs under her. "This week has been strange. A few days ago I did not know you existed. Now I cannot imagine not knowing you." Something shifted in his expression. "I know what you mean." The air between them felt charged suddenly. Sarah was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how the firelight played across his features, how his eyes seemed to hold depths she wanted to explore. Callum stood abruptly. "I should check the fire in the stove. Make sure it is set for the night." He disappeared into the kitchen, and Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. This was dangerous territory. She was vulnerable, starting a new life, definitely not ready for anything romantic. And Callum was still mourning his wife. Getting involved would be a mistake. But as Sarah lay in bed that night, listening to the wind whistle around the cottage eaves, she could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, as if he saw not just the woman in his oversized clothes with nowhere to go, but someone worth knowing. The next morning, McPherson called. "Your car is fixed. Running like new. Well, running like it was before it broke, at any rate." "That is wonderful," Sarah said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. "I can pick it up today?" "Aye, any time. I will be here until 6. Sarah hung up and found Callum watching her from his desk. "The car is ready." "I heard." He closed his laptop. "I will drive you to collect it." The ride to Kinlochleven was quiet. Sarah tried to memorize the landscape, knowing she would not be returning this way. Her new flat in Inverness was waiting. Her job started in 3 days. This interlude was over. McPherson had indeed worked miracles. The car started smoothly, and he assured her everything was in order. Sarah paid him with her credit card, wincing at the amount, but grateful it was not worse. Callum followed her in the Land Rover as she drove slowly back to his cottage. When they arrived, Sarah parked and got out, facing the inevitable goodbye. "Thank you seems inadequate," she said. "You saved my life. You gave me shelter. You showed me kindness when I desperately needed it." "You are welcome." Callum's face was carefully neutral. "I hope your new job goes well. I hope Inverness treats you kindly." "Will you?" Sarah hesitated. "Will you stay in touch? I would like to know how the book is progressing." "Of course, if you want to." He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. His email and phone number were printed in simple black text. "Let me know when you are settled." Sarah took the card, their fingers brushing. That electric tingle ran through her again, stronger this time. She looked up and found Callum looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Sarah." His voice was rough. "If circumstances were different, if we had met at another time." "I know." She did know. She felt it too. This pull between them, this sense that something significant was happening. But circumstances are what they are. "Aye." He stepped back. "Drive safely. Watch the weather." Sarah got into her car, throat tight with unshed tears. This was ridiculous. She barely knew this man. 4 days was nothing. And yet, as she drove away and watched the cottage disappear in her rearview mirror, it felt like she was leaving something important behind. The flat in Inverness was small, but comfortable. Sarah spent the weekend unpacking, preparing lessons, trying not to think about a stone cottage in the Highlands. On Monday, she met her new colleagues, who were welcoming and friendly. On Tuesday, she met her students, a lively group of 12-year-olds who tested her patience and made her laugh. By Wednesday, Sarah thought she had successfully moved on from her unexpected encounter with Callum Mackenzie. Then she got home to find an email waiting. "Sarah, I trust you arrived safely, and that Inverness is agreeing with you. I thought you might be interested to know that we had another storm last night. The road flooded again. I thought of you, stranded in your car, and was grateful once more that I happened to be passing by that evening. The cottage seems quiet without you here. I did not realize how much I had grown used to sharing meals, to having someone to talk to in the evenings. I suppose 4 days was enough to break 3 years of solitude. I hope your students appreciate having you as their teacher. If they do not, they are fools." Callum Sarah read the email 3 times, her heart beating faster with each reading. She sat down at her laptop and began to type. "Callum, Inverness is lovely. My flat is small but has a view of the river. My colleagues are nice, though I suspect they gossip about the English teacher who appeared out of nowhere. My students are wonderful. Challenging, but wonderful. I think about the cottage often, about our walks in the glen, our conversations by the fire, about how safe I felt there, which is strange because I barely know you. But somehow, I felt I could trust you completely from the moment you knocked on my car window. Thank you again for everything. You gave me more than shelter from the storm. You gave me hope that good people still exist, that kindness is not dead, that I made the right choice in starting over. Sarah. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The reply came the next morning. Sarah, trust is not given lightly. I am honored that you trusted me. I hope I proved worthy of it. If you find yourself missing the Highlands, you are always welcome to visit. I make no promises of excitement, only quiet, good whiskey, and adequate cooking. The glen looks beautiful this time of year. The heather is starting to bloom. Callum Sarah smiled at her computer screen. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a pattern of regular emails. Callum would write about his work, about the landscape, about his thoughts on history and life. Sarah would share stories about her students, about her growing affection for Inverness, about her slowly healing heart. They never spoke on the phone. The emails felt safer somehow, more intimate. They could say things in writing that might feel too heavy in conversation. 2 months after they had met, Callum sent an email that was different from the others. Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I am going to be more direct than is probably wise. I cannot stop thinking about you. Not in a passing way, not as a fond memory of a pleasant week. I think about you constantly. When I walk to the waterfall, I imagine showing you the path. When I cook dinner, I remember you laughing at my attempts to make your mother's recipe from memory. When I sit by the fire at night, I feel your absence like a physical ache. I know this is foolish. We spent 4 days together. We live 2 hours apart. You are rebuilding your life and do not need complications. I am still learning how to live in a world without my wife. But I had to tell you, I could not keep pretending these were casual, friendly emails when every word I write is an attempt to stay connected to you. You do not have to respond to this. I will understand if you would prefer not to continue our correspondence. But I could not lie anymore, even by omission. Callum Sarah read the email with shaking hands. She closed her laptop, opened it, read it again. Her heart was pounding. Her palms were sweaty, and she was smiling. She picked up her phone, and for the first time, called the number on the card Callum had given her. He answered on the 3rd ring. Sarah? I cannot stop thinking about you either. The words tumbled out in a rush. I have tried. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was just gratitude, that I barely know you. But I dream about that cottage. I dream about you. Sarah. Just her name, but the way he said it made her shiver. I am terrified, she admitted. I just got out of a marriage that broke me. I swore I would not jump into anything new. I need time to heal, to find myself again. I understand. His voice was gentle. I am terrified too. Feeling something for someone other than my wife feels like betrayal, even though I know she would want me to be happy. So what do we do? Callum was quiet for a moment. We take our time. No pressure. No expectations. You visit when you can. I visit you when I can. We see what happens. Okay. Sarah felt relief wash over her. Okay, I can do that. This weekend, Callum said. Come for the weekend, if you want to. I want to. Sarah was already mentally clearing her calendar. I will drive up Friday after school. I will make dinner. Nothing fancy, but edible. Callum, I am glad you sent that email. So am I. Drive safely, Sarah Mitchell. I will. See you Friday. Callum Mackenzie. Friday afternoon seemed to take forever to arrive. Sarah's students sensed her distraction and took advantage, testing boundaries and being louder than usual. But finally, the last bell rang. Sarah grabbed her bag and almost ran to her car. The drive to Callum's cottage took 2 hours through increasingly beautiful countryside. Sarah's heart rate increased as she recognized landmarks from that first fateful night. The petrol station where she had gotten bad directions, the turnoff where her GPS had died, and then the narrow road that wound up into the hills. But this time, she was not lost. She knew exactly where she was going. The cottage looked just as she remembered. Smoke rose from the chimney, warm light glowed from the windows, and Callum was standing in the doorway, waiting. Sarah parked and got out. They stood looking at each other across the small distance, and Sarah felt all her fears melt away. This was right. This was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Hello?" she said softly. "Hello?" Callum smiled. That rare, beautiful smile. "Welcome back." Sarah closed the distance between them. "It is good to be back." They went inside, and it felt like coming home. Callum took her coat, asked about her drive, poured her a glass of wine. But there was a new tension in the air now, a heightened awareness of each other. Over dinner, they talked as they always had, but their eyes kept meeting and holding. Their hands would brush when passing dishes. The air felt electric. After they had cleaned up, they settled by the fire with their drinks. Sarah sat on the sofa this time instead of in a chair. Callum sat beside her, close, but not touching. "I have missed this," Sarah said. "The peace, the quiet, being able to hear myself think. I have missed you." Callum set down his glass and turned to face her. Not just the company. You specifically. Sarah's breath caught. "Callum, I know we said we would take our time. I know we need to be careful. But Sarah, I need you to know. This is not casual for me. You are not casual for me. You are not casual for me either." Sarah reached out and took his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, perfectly. "I am falling for you. I have been since the night you rescued me. I did not rescue you. You would have figured something out. Maybe. But I am glad I did not have to." She squeezed his hand. "I am glad it was you who found me." Callum lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles gently. "I am glad too." They sat there for a long moment, just holding hands and looking at each other. Then Callum leaned in slowly, giving Sarah every chance to pull away. She did not pull away. She met him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, sweet. A question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I have wanted to do that for 2 months," Callum admitted. "Only 2 months? I have wanted it since the second day." Sarah laughed at his surprised expression. "When you showed me the waterfall and looked at me like I was something precious." "You are something precious." He cupped her face gently. "And I am going to spend as long as it takes proving that to you." They kissed again, deeper this time. Sarah's hand found its way into Callum's hair. His arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. It felt right. It felt like coming home. That night, Sarah slept in the same bedroom as before, and Callum slept on the sofa. They were taking their time after all. But in the morning, when Sarah came out to find him making coffee, the smile he gave her was full of promise. Over the following months, they fell into a pattern. Sarah would drive to the cottage most weekends. Sometimes Callum would come to Inverness, though he preferred the isolation of the glen. They talked for hours. They walked the hills. They sat in comfortable silence while Callum wrote and Sarah planned lessons. Slowly, Sarah told him about her marriage, about Marcus's affairs, his casual cruelty, the way he had made her feel small and worthless. Callum listened without judgment, his anger on her behalf carefully controlled but palpable. "He was a fool," Callum said after one particularly difficult conversation, "and I am grateful for his foolishness, because it brought you here. But if I ever meet him, I will have words." Sarah laughed despite herself. My fierce protector. Always. It was not a joke. It was a promise. Callum in turn talked about his wife, about how they had met at university, how she had made him laugh, how her death had shattered his world. Sarah listened and held his hand and did not feel jealous of a dead woman. She understood that Callum's capacity to love her did not diminish his love for his late wife. "She would have liked you," Callum said one evening. "She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, who would not let me disappear into my books. I do challenge you, do I not? Constantly." He kissed her forehead. "It is one of your best qualities." 6 months after that first weekend, Callum asked Sarah to move in with him. They were sitting by the stream, watching the sunset paint the hills gold. "I know it is a big ask," he said. "You would be farther from work. You would be isolated. But Sarah, I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life with you here." Sarah's heart swelled. "Yes." "Yes?" Callum looked almost shocked, as if he had expected her to need convincing. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." She threw her arms around his neck. "I have been waiting for you to ask. You could have asked me. I wanted you to be ready. I am ready." He held her close. "I am so ready." Moving was easier than Sarah expected. She had not accumulated much in her small Inverness flat. Most of her belongings fit in Callum's Land Rover in 2 trips. Her commute would be longer, but the school was understanding. Several other teachers lived in remote locations. Mrs. Fraser in Kinlochleven was delighted when she heard the news. "I knew it," she crowed. "From the moment I saw you two together, I knew. Callum Mackenzie, you have sense after all." "Thank you, Mrs. Fraser." Callum's tone was dry but affectionate. "You take care of that girl. She is good for you." "I know she is." Life in the cottage with Callum was everything Sarah had hoped it would be. They each had their routines. Callum wrote in the mornings while Sarah planned lessons or graded papers. In the afternoons, they would walk or work in the small vegetable garden Callum had started. Evenings were for cooking together, reading together, talking by the fire. Sarah's students noticed a change in her. "You are really happy now, miss," one of the girls observed. "You smile all the time." "I am happy," Sarah confirmed. "Very happy." 1 year after they had met, Callum took Sarah back to the spot where her car had broken down. The road had been repaired and was no longer quite so treacherous. They stood looking at the place where their lives had intersected. "What would have happened if I had driven past that night?" Callum mused. "If I had assumed you would be fine, but you did not drive past. You stopped." Sarah took his hand. "You always stop." "I am glad I did." He turned to face her, reaching into his pocket. "I have been trying to find the right moment for this, but I realize there is no perfect moment. There is just us, and this place, and the fact that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." He pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a simple gold band with a small sapphire. "Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me? Will you stay with me in this cottage and build a life and grow old watching the seasons change?" Sarah was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." Callum slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, right there on the road where they had met, while the Highland wind whistled around them. They were married in the small church in Kinlochleven 6 months later. Sarah's mother came up from London, delighted that her daughter had found happiness again. Callum's friends from Edinburgh made the trip. Mrs. Fraser wept through the entire ceremony. The reception was at the cottage, with folding tables set up in the glen and fairy lights strung between the trees. They danced under the stars while someone played a fiddle. It was simple and perfect, and exactly right. That night, As they lay in bed in the cottage that was now truly their home, Sarah thought about the scared woman who had driven down a dark road a year and a half ago. She had been so lost then, so broken, and now she was found. "What are you thinking?" Callum asked, running his fingers through her hair. "That I am glad my GPS stopped working, that I am glad I took the wrong turn, that I am glad I got stuck on your road. Our road," he corrected gently. "Everything is ours now." "Our road then?" Sarah smiled. "Where would I be if you had not found me? Where would I be if you had not let me help?" Callum pulled her closer. "We found each other, Sarah. That is what matters." And it was true. They had both been lost in different ways, both running from pain, both trying to rebuild shattered lives. But that stormy night, when a stranger knocked on a car window and offered help, two broken pieces had started to become whole. The cottage in the glen became their sanctuary. Sarah continued teaching, making the long drive several times a week, but never regretting the distance. Callum finished his history book, dedicated to Sarah, who reminds me that the best stories are the ones we live. They had disagreements, of course. Sarah wanted to renovate the kitchen. Callum wanted to leave it as his mother had known it. They compromised, updating while preserving the character. Callum wanted more solitude than Sarah sometimes needed. They compromised, with Sarah spending time in Inverness with colleagues while Callum wrote. But the disagreements were small things, easily resolved because they both valued what they had built together. They had learned from their pasts. They knew how precious love was, how easily it could be lost, how important it was to fight for it every single day. 2 years after their wedding, Sarah stood in the kitchen making tea when she heard Callum's footsteps behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how different my life is now, how happy I am, even on this rainy Tuesday morning in the middle of nowhere. Especially on this rainy Tuesday morning in the middle of nowhere." She turned in his arms to face him. "This is home, Callum. You are home. You are my home too." He kissed her softly. "My unexpected, wonderful, stubborn home." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while rain pattered against the windows, and the kettle whistled on the stove. Outside, the highland wind blew, and the stream rushed, and the hills stood eternal. And inside the stone cottage, two people who had been lost had found each other and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their former lives. That evening, as they sat by the fire as they had done hundreds of times before, Sarah thought about the question she had asked that very first night. Why had Callum helped her? He had said it was because people had helped him when he needed it. But Sarah thought it was more than that. Sometimes the universe conspires to put people in each other's paths. Sometimes a wrong turn is exactly right. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to be found. Sarah had driven down a dark Highland road expecting nothing but a shorter route to her new life. Instead, she had found Callum. She had found love. She had found home. And every day, she was grateful for the storm that had stranded her, the stranger who had stopped to help, and the courage it had taken for both of them to let their broken hearts heal. Years later, when they told people the story of how they met, Callum would always end by saying, "She was lost, I was lost, and somehow we found each other." And Sarah would add, "Best wrong turn I ever made." Because it was true. The best things in life often come from the moments when everything seems to be going wrong. When you are at your most vulnerable, when you are forced to accept help, when you have no choice but to trust a stranger. Sarah had trusted Callum that stormy night, and he had proven worthy of that trust every day since. He had given her shelter from more than just the rain. He had given her a safe place to heal, to grow, to learn to love again. And she had given him something just as precious. She had reminded him that life goes on after loss, that the heart can love again without forgetting what it loved before. That isolation is a choice, not a necessity. Together, in their cottage in the Scottish Highlands, they built a life full of quiet joy, morning coffee and evening whiskey, long walks and longer conversations, books and laughter and the occasional argument about whether to get a dog. They did eventually, a border collie named Storm, who loved the hills as much as they did. Sarah never forgot that she had been rescued that night on the dark road, but she also came to understand that Callum had been rescued too. They had saved each other, and that, in the end, was the truest kind of love story. The kind where two broken people decide to be broken together, and in doing so, become whole. The kind where a wrong turn leads to exactly the right place. The kind where getting lost is actually being found. And so they lived, in their stone cottage in the glen, watching the seasons change and the years pass. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their hands developing lines. But their love only deepened, strengthened by every shared sunrise, every weathered storm, every quiet moment of contentment. Visitors to the Highlands would sometimes get lost on the old mountain roads, and if they happened to find their way to a stone cottage in a hidden glen, they would be welcomed by a couple who understood better than most the value of helping a stranger. Because Callum and Sarah never forgot that they themselves had once been strangers who took a chance on each other, and that chance had made all the difference. Have you ever wondered if one wrong turn could lead you to exactly where you are meant to be? For Sarah Mitchell and Callum Mackenzie, the answer was yes. One wrong turn, one stormy night, one knock on a car window, and two lives forever changed. Sometimes the best destinations are the ones you never planned to reach. Sometimes the people you are meant to love are the ones you meet when you are lost. And sometimes, just sometimes, breaking down on a dark road is the beginning of the greatest journey of all. The journey home.